Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're at. Best thing about webinars is we're so international. Just make sure you're here for the right thing. This is the Industry Insight session with Reza, the co-founder of Alif. Today we'll be watching a conversation between me, actually, and Reza that we had when we were in Pleasanton in California in their office. It's a really good chat, so I hope you get as much out of it as I did while I was there. But we're just going to wait maybe a couple minutes just for everybody else to join. You know, typically some people join straight away, but then it takes about 2-3 minutes for everyone to drop what they're doing and come in. So thank you for being the cool guys here early. May as well take this moment to show off some hardware. We've got one of Alif's E7 ensemble dev kits. Actually, I just made a video about this guy. If you want to check it out on YouTube. It's a blinky tutorial where we make the LED blink on this. So I assume lots of us here today are hardware engineers and will understand that that is a bigger task than maybe our sales teams think it is. But this is a fantastic piece of hardware if you haven't got your hands on it already. Actually, I've got quite a lot of Alif gear here. An AI ML app kit as well. It's got the screen and the camera. Very cool. I think we should start. I don't want to waste any more of your time. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's Industry Insight session. In a minute, we're going to be joined by Reza. He's the co-founder of Alif Semiconductor, and we're going to be talking about the future of AI at the edge. Quite broad, but it was a fantastic chat, and I hope you get insights from it too. If you joined the session, I think it's safe to assume you probably have some interest in Alif's fusion processes. Maybe you've even had the chance to play with something like this kit like me, or maybe it's interested in generative AI on microcontrollers. I can definitely see why. It's a pretty wild headline. I guess I didn't even know why that was necessary until this chat, so I hope you get some insights from it too. Either way, for whatever reason you're here, it is great to see you. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll cover on why generative AI is arriving on small and power-constrained devices faster than you might have expected, the pitfalls of proprietary architectures, and how to design for a world of more than 50 billion connected devices. Big stuff. There is a question function, and I recommend you make use of it whilst you're here. I highly recommend you do. It's a guaranteed way to get a good response from Alif's technical team. They're a busy company. They can be hard to get onto, so I recommend you make use of it because you're going to get a good response. As I said, we're going to be cutting between a conversation between me and the co-founder, Reza. So we won't be answering any of these questions live, but Alif's team will be back in contact with you ASAP. They've got a great team of engineers, salespeople, anyone who you might need. Don't be scared to make use of that questions function. In addition, it's completely anonymous. Who asks a question to the rest of the room? We know who you are, but no one else does. So don't be shy. Feel free to ask away. Alif, ipXchange are a bunch of great people. We'll take good care of you. All right, I think that's enough. Let's cut to the chat. I'm sitting here today at Alif's headquarters with co-founder Reza. You've been a person who's been very involved with the industry for quite a while now. What are the trends that you've seen in Edge AI as of yet?
I think we are just at the beginning of seeing the trends on the GenAI. I think we will yet to see what will evolve in the coming years. But what is very encouraging is if we look at the future of endpoint or Edge AI devices, we are going to see applications which will evolve in many different market segments. Mm-hmm. Healthcare management, health devices, transportation, mobility, autonomous driving, robotics, smart homes, smart cities, where the GenAI, the capability to use GenAI is going to become more and more important. So we will see a market that actually is going to start to continue to grow in a much faster way than it is happening today. And like any other semiconductor company, my view is we have to be ready for what the market wants 5 years from now and 10 years from now, not for yesterday. That was our story of how we started, and that's going to be how we're going to continue.
How do you ensure that you have the future in mind when you're designing these? How could you possibly know the future? And even if you don't, how do you ensure that you'll be ready for it?
I think, well, that's a very good question. I think some of it is kind of a vision and insight, but the other part of it is to really have a better understanding how the systems are going to evolve. How, for example, when you look at the robot, how would the robot evolve? What are the expectations from a robot? And you look at the machine to human interface, how that needs to evolve. Then you look at the ability of the robot to have more independent decision-making capabilities, the ability to be able to create content. So you look at all those different kind of abilities that might be required as time goes on. And our task is to innovate, which means we take some of those requirements and capabilities that will be required, translate it to a system architecture that we can implement on our next product that will usually take 2 to 3 years to develop. So it is kind of like a cycle that we constantly have to go through to be ready for the future.
Yeah, you've got a whole new series of ensemble microcontrollers coming out. You've got E4, E6, and E8.
Correct.
And they feature generative AI. Is this the future that you see for edge devices?
To start with, I should explain that we participate in the market, which is extremely fragmented and broad. I mean, the microcontroller or the embedded processor market is $35-40 billion and will continue to grow. Along the same lines, there are a few more statistics which are also very interesting. The number of the devices which are supposedly going to fuel IoT of the future is going to cross 50 billion by 2030.
50 billion by 2030.
Which means there will be 50 billion devices that need to run at the endpoints or at the edge between 2030 and 2035.
Yeah.
A lot of these devices will have to be AI enabled. And that is just a result of evolution of the technology.
And new applications we're constantly seeing, yes.
The difficulty of this whole thing is the market is extremely broad, the use cases are very broad, and there's not a single device which can satisfy the requirements for all these different applications. And that is really where our background and who we were before we started Alif became very important. We wanted to create an architecture and a platform that could satisfy a lot of these fragmented use cases. And each one of those use cases have their own constraint. So we defined our portfolio and the evolution of our product and our roadmap to be able to deliver the requirements of these applications, these 50 billion IoT devices.
Yes.
Some of them will be more advanced than the others. And as time goes on, the ability to run GenAI on some of those billions of devices will become more and more important. And that is the result of what we have created with the new series of devices that we're trying to take to the market.
Reza, what are some of the challenges that people who are developing edge AI applications today actually facing?
As I said earlier, 5 years ago, the market was not that much focused on running AI at the edge or the endpoints. The number of devices that have to be installed in the field in billions or crossing almost 50 billion devices, but the majority of them want to have a certain capability to run AI, are evolving very fast. Developers who want to develop those applications with AI capability on the edge have to start by developing an algorithm. Then they have to train it, and eventually they have to optimize and compile it. For a very fragmented base of applications and use cases at the edge and in the endpoint, this is an enormous task because there is no one standard application. There are many different applications. Many different expectations in terms of the capability of the application, the amount of the size of the model that has to be developed and what it needs to run. And that is the challenge that all those developers are facing. What makes it a lot more difficult is if the architecture that they have to use to develop their software-based application to run on is proprietary and changes from one supplier to the other supplier, makes their task a lot more difficult because that algorithm, which is optimized for one hardware, may not run at all on a different hardware. In my opinion, and that's how we have built our product portfolio and our architecture, we wanted to rely on open source architectures, which have a good ecosystem developed around them in terms of the framework and tool chain that would enable the developers to rely on a better ecosystem and an open source and enable them to develop their application faster, but also to be able to easily change the hardware if they need to for the next generation of application they have to implement. Open source architectures easily allow that to happen, or at least easier for them to use in open source. It's much more difficult to develop something in a proprietary architecture and having to change it. And that is one thing which was extremely important to us. Rely on the open source, innovate on the system around the open source.
So I think one of the biggest advantages that we can give to people developing these applications is by having open source architecture and an ecosystem to support them.
Correct. So I was once asked, what is, in my opinion, what is the most important thing on the evolution of the AI at the edge in general? And my answer was standardization.
Right.
The more we standardized around certain open source architectures, the easier will be that task for the big open community of the developers.
Yeah, it seems that the development in this space has been going so fast that there hasn't even been a chance for standardization, and now is the time to lay those paths.
Exactly.
So as our edge AI applications continue to grow, as they continue to evolve with what sort of capabilities we require from them, what do you think is actually going to be the limiting factor of these devices? Is it going to be the hardware or the software?
So let me answer the question this way. I mean, go back and look at the last several years. Let's say, for example, take 2018 to today, correct? If you look at the AI-based models, like the LLMs,
Yes.
in 2018,
Very simple.
the number of parameters that they were running was in tens of millions. You look at GPT or you look at Llama or similar type of LLM languages, they are now crossing 1 trillion parameters, which means the software is moving with an enormous speed. Of course, this type of languages run on servers and big data warehouses. When it comes to edge AI, we are now relying on the concept which is called SLMs, correct? The small language models, which is usually pruned and distilled from the larger language models.
Yes.
But they're developed to run at the edge AI or the endpoints on more constrained devices. So when you look at those, the hardware which runs on those edge applications, they are always constrained in many areas. The footprint or the size, there's a limitation of the size. There's a limitation of the battery consumption.
The amount of power
because
you
the
can
heat
use.
consumption could be very high, or the battery consumption, the consumption may be too high for the battery. And of course, it needs to connect to cloud, so the security becomes important. So many of those constraints exist. When you look at the software and the hardware, without a doubt, in my opinion, the software is running well ahead of the hardware. But that is giving us, as a semiconductor supplier, a really good angle for the market entry, because now it's all about innovation and how we enable the semiconductor, the microcontroller, to be able to handle bigger models and bigger SLMs. I'll give you a very good example. For example, look at the smart glasses, correct? The smart glasses are becoming all of a sudden very popular in the last 2 or 3 years, and the expectation is they are going to become part of the human-to-machine interface as time goes on. They may even replace the cell phone in some major way. But the limitations that those smart glasses have are very interesting. The requirement is the weight of the glass has to be less than 40 grams. They're going to have multiple cameras, multiple PDMs, processors, Wi-Fi capability, cloud connectivity capability. They have to run big AI models. The entire thing needs to be in a fashionable frame, less than 40 grams.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you realize, oh my God, to do this, how am I going to put a big model in a memory, have the memory to talk to the CPU? How am I going to give it enough power without heating it on my face to burn my face, because it cannot get too hot? It needs to communicate to the outside world. Those constraints are going to always run, in my opinion, behind the software. So if software is going to evolve, the constraint always going to be the hardware. And suppliers, or the hardware suppliers, semiconductor suppliers who could actually deliver the most amount of innovation and capability built into the silicon or the semiconductor will run ahead. And that is really the idea I have in my mind, and that is the way we will have to operate within Alif. How we manage those constraints.
What are the biggest challenges that you see for actually enabling edge AI devices, that's software and hardware? What are the biggest challenges that you see?
Good question. I think the way I like to answer that question is from the perspective of a semiconductor company, correct? When you look at the edge AI applications, again, I go back to the same comment I made earlier, that you see a very broad, fragmented set of use cases, which will vary anywhere from a wearable device that has to run a certain amount of AI, all the way maybe to a gateway. The requirements of the hardware that needs to run on these two devices are completely different.
Yes.
So that's the starting point of the difficulty of the challenge. In my opinion, the way we have to address that, what I call the constraints in the system, because all these systems are hardware constrained.
Yes.
The constraint comes from a few different areas. It comes from the ability to run a certain workload or AI workload on the machine or on the CPU, the ability to have enough optimum or efficient interaction between the CPU and the memory to be able to manage algorithms and the models, which can sometimes become very large, like SLMs. The ability to do it in an extremely power efficient way for devices that have to rely on a battery power and last long enough. And of course, since all these devices are going to be one way or the other connected to the cloud, security of the connection to the cloud and the privacy is becoming extremely important.
Yes.
What we have done in Alif, which is really our way of differentiating the marketplace, is to have thought about all of these things years ago when we started our architectural platform development.
Before anyone else.
Before anybody else. We integrated what we call a very efficient AI engine or an NPU engine on board. Our system architecture works very well, makes the device to work very well between the NPUs, CPUs, and the memory in a way that we can actually manage the power consumption in a very smart way. And we did it in a scalable manner. That's why, for example, if you look at our product portfolio and you look at different series of devices that we announce, you see a wide range of capabilities which are built into those devices in terms of the number of cores, the amount of memory, the amount of integration we do. But yet, they are all architecturally uniformly running on the same architecture. It means the bus architecture, the interaction of the CPU to the bus, the interaction of the IOs, and the different peripherals is identical, which means the software can be ported from one to the other very easily.
Yes.
That architectural approach to our devices, including the way we have built security, makes our platform very differentiated against some of our other competitors in the marketplace. And then our ability to evolve it to the next generation devices becomes very important. There's also one more element that from day one was very important to us. We like to put our innovation on the system architecture and our understanding of how the system needs to work, but not to rely on proprietary NPUs or CPUs that has to be used by the user. We think when you look at this wide base of applications in the marketplace with a large number of different users, we need to commonalize on the architecture of the NPUs or the CPUs, but innovate on the system side. Because that open architecture, which could be available to multiple users from an individual NPU or CPU, would enable development of the ecosystem to become a lot more efficient and more users can be using our platform. That is also another way that we decided to differentiate our architectural evolutions compared to our competitors. Some of our competitors have developed their own, for example, proprietary NPU architectures, and I think that's a determinant to adoption of their products in the marketplace.
You've been very involved in the edge AI market with your 32-bit micros. How did you sort of get to this point?
When we started Alif in 2019, correct? The market was not really wasn't really that much focused on edge AI or the ability to run AI at the endpoints and the edge AI.
Not in 2019.
Before Alif, I was involved with the microcontroller and embedded processor market for many, many years. So the idea of Alif at the time of conception was about creating the ability for the future and not follow the past. So in 2019, when Alif got started, we wanted to look at the abilities that we wanted to create for the devices that need to run at the endpoint and at the edge for the following 15 years. So we focused on the very architectures which are capable to deliver certain capabilities that did not exist at the time. One of them for me was the ability to run AI at the edge. And that is how we define our first devices. That's how we define our platform and our architecture. And we have evolved it since then. The market became very hot and very focused on edge AI only in the last 2 or 3 years, especially for embedded microcontrollers for the endpoint and the edge AI application. And the fact that we were thinking about it before that has given us an edge to be running ahead in the marketplace.
An edge on edge AI, if you will. Do you think that the Alif Semiconductor 32-bit micros that you are just releasing now are going to be able to service the needs of engineers and people who use the products that they're put into until 2030?
And beyond 2030, I hope. For sure, until 2030, but I also hope beyond 2030 because we will continue to evolve our products and our architectures. As I said, the difficulty of this whole field is there is not a single device. So you need to have a sequence of devices, a family and a roadmap that continue to evolve with one very clear requirements from my point of view. And that is the fact that architecturally, all these different fragmented applications need to rely on a platform which is architecturally uniform and not rely on individual devices. And that is really the vision we have at Alif. Our family of products run based on what we call a scalable architecture, where we can handle different applications.
Yes.
Some of them will require GenAI. And as time goes on, and as we introduce more products, we increase the capability of our devices, but they will architecturally be uniform across this fragmented base.
Yes, makes it easy. So if you choose one microcontroller 5 years ago, and the capabilities change into the future, you've got compatibility and people who understand your software.
You got it.
Perfect. At the end of the day, for most engineers and consumers of your products, having something that is proprietary or non-proprietary, often they won't know what that actually means for them. To have architecture that's built of non-proprietary sources, what does that mean for the engineer who will be implementing this into a design?
All right, so let me give you an example. Let's say you want to develop an AI-based model that, for example, can do image classification.
Great.
You know, take an image from a camera, take that image, run an AI on it, do image classification or detection, and basically do some predictive or some other functions that the user wants on it, correct?
Sure.
So you have to develop an algorithm, which is the base model. Then that algorithm needs to be trained. So you need to collect data, train the model, and eventually you have to optimize it, and then eventually have to compile it and change it to a bare metal that can be programmed to the final device, the microcontroller.
Yes.
How you do this is very different if you use different NPU architectures.
Sure.
That means if a user uses one type of NPU for this task, it's going to be, they basically have to repeat the same work if they want to switch to a different device. And then they need to rely on ecosystem of third-party tools and et cetera to be able to do everything from model optimization, training, compiling, and eventually bare metal programming. If the architecture itself is a standard architecture which could be available to everybody as an NPU, that task becomes much easier, but gives a lot of empowerment to the general users.
Right.
So as a semiconductor supplier, we said we are going to make this to be a standard NPU that we use within our products, so the user could benefit from that. But we put our innovation not to unnecessarily invent an NPU, but to put our innovation around the system built around the NPU. And that is the way we differentiate against our competitors sometimes.
It is completely designed around the NPU with edge cases in mind.
A standard NPUs, but with system innovation that we put in it.
Reza,
thank you.
Thanks for joining me. All right, we're back. I hope you all enjoyed that. But that will bring today's Industry Insights session to a close. I hope everyone had the chance to make use of that question function I told you about earlier. If you have already, as I said, Alif will be in contact with you shortly, ASAP, sometime tomorrow, maybe. This session will continue for a few more minutes, so that means you'll have some time to get in any last questions that you might have. But then after about 3 minutes, it'll be gone, so get it in there. I'm going to be heading off now. There'll probably be an end slide here where you can take some time and have a think. But see you. Thank you very much for attending, taking some time out of your day. I hope you got as much out of that chat as I did, and you should have another 3 minutes or so. Until then, see ya.